The recreational dome on Europa was quiet except for the sound of children laughing. Outside, Jupiter's massive form filled the sky, its great red spot visible through the transparent ceiling. Inside, 10-year-old Marcus Blake was trying to teach his alien friend Tikva how to play basketball. "You have to bounce it," Marcus said, demonstrating with the orange ball. "Like this." Tikva, a young Lyrian with pale blue skin and 4 arms, tried to copy the movement. All 4 hands hit the ball at once, sending it bouncing wildly across the court. Katie Wong, 12 years old and the most athletic kid in the colony, caught it before it could escape. "Use just 2 hands," she suggested with a grin. "Top ones for control, bottom ones for power." The 3 friends had grown up together on Europa's mining colony. Their parents worked side by side extracting precious ice and minerals from beneath the frozen surface. Katie's mother ran the atmospheric processors, Marcus's father maintained the drilling equipment, and Tikva's parent unit coordinated communications between species. The colony was one of the few places where humans and aliens lived together as equals. Children from both species played, learned, and grew up together, creating bonds that their parents hoped would shape the future of interstellar relations. "I think I understand," Tikva said, trying again. This time the ball bounced properly, and Marcus clapped his hands. "That's it, now try to throw it through the hoop." The sound of the emergency siren cut through their game. All 3 children froze. In their entire lives on Europa, they had only heard that sound during drills, and there was no drill scheduled for today. "What's happening?" Katie asked, looking around. The lights in the dome flickered once, then steadied. Tikva's ear appendages twitched. "Something's wrong with the communication network. I can't hear the colony broadcast." Marcus ran to the nearest wall panel and pressed the emergency information button. Nothing happened. He tried again, harder this time. Still nothing. "We should get to our parents," Katie said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. She had always been the leader among them, the one who made decisions when things got difficult. The 3 children headed for the exit, but before they could reach it, the dome's lights went out completely. Emergency lighting clicked on, bathing everything in red. The door to the rec dome slid open, but instead of their parents, 3 figures stood silhouetted in the entrance. They were tall and thin, wearing armor that seemed to absorb the emergency lighting. Their faces were hidden behind sleek helmets. "Run!" Katie shouted, but it was too late. One of the figures raised something that looked like a weapon. A blue pulse shot out and Tikva collapsed mid-stride. Marcus started to run for the equipment room, but another pulse caught him in the back. His legs went numb, and he fell to the floor. Katie almost made it to the emergency exit before the 3rd pulse hit her. As she fell, she heard one of the armored figures speak in a language she didn't understand. Through blurry vision, Marcus watched the figures move closer. They were definitely not human or Lyrian. Their movements were too smooth, too precise. One of them bent down and picked up Tikva as if the young Lyrian weighed nothing. "Specimen acceptable," a mechanical voice said through a translator. "Collect the others." Marcus tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. He watched helplessly as another figure approached Katie. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the black visor of the alien helmet leaning over him. Commander Kyle Peterson was in his office reviewing security protocols when the first alarm sounded. He immediately stood up, his military training taking over. The lights flickered once and his computer screen went dark. "Status report," he called out as he rushed into the command center. "We've lost primary power in sectors 3 through 7, Lieutenant Maria Santos reported. "Communications are down colony-wide. Switch to backup systems." "Already tried, sir. Something's jamming our signals." Peterson moved to the main console, his fingers flying over the controls. Nothing responded properly. This wasn't a simple power failure or equipment malfunction. This was an attack. "Get me eyes on the recreation dome," he ordered. "That's where the children should be right now." Santos pulled up the security feeds, but all they showed was static. Peterson felt his stomach drop. 30 years of military experience had taught him that when systems fail this completely, it's never by accident. "Assemble security teams," he said. "Full gear, we're going in blind." As his team gathered, the colony's alien ambassador, High Counselor Zex, burst into the command center. The Lyrian's usually calm demeanor was gone, replaced by barely contained panic. "Commander, I've received a partial transmission from my people," Zex said, his voice shaking. "Unknown vessels in orbit. They're not responding to any of our hails." "How many ships?" "We detected 3 before our sensors went offline." Peterson cursed under his breath. The Europa colony had defenses, but they were designed to handle pirates and small-scale threats, not a coordinated military assault. The security team moved through the darkened corridors toward the recreation dome. Emergency lighting cast long shadows, and their footsteps echoed in the unusual silence. Peterson led the way, his weapon ready. When they reached the dome, they found it empty. The basketball still lay on the court, and Tikva's practice equipment was scattered across the floor. But the children were gone. "Search the area," Peterson ordered. "Look for anything that might tell us what happened." Santos found the first clue, strange marks on the floor that didn't match any known boot print. Then Jenkins discovered something, even more disturbing, a small device attached to the wall still humming with energy. "Sir, you need to see this," Jenkins called out. Peterson examined the device. It was sleek, black, and covered in symbols he had never seen before. Zex approached, and his skin turned even paler than usual. "Commander," the Lyrian said slowly, "I recognize this technology. It belongs to the Vorath." "Who are they?" "A species from the Outer Rim, raiders and slavers. We've had encounters with them before." Peterson felt his blood run cold. "They took the children?" "It appears so." "How long ago?" Jenkins checked his scanner. "Energy signatures suggest no more than 30 minutes. Peterson activated his communicator, trying once more to reach the rest of the colony. This time he got through. "This is Commander Peterson. We have a code black situation. Multiple children taken from the recreation dome by unknown hostiles. All available personnel report to Command Center immediately." He turned to Zex. "Can you track their ships?" "Not with our systems down, but there's something you should know about the Vorath." Zex hesitated. "They've never encountered humans before." "What does that mean?" "It means they have no idea what they've just done." In the command center, parents were beginning to arrive, their faces etched with worry. Among them were Marcus's mother, a tough engineer named Lisa Blake, and Katie's father, Dr. James Wong, the colony's chief scientist. "Where's my daughter?" Dr. Wong demanded. Peterson took a deep breath. "Several children have been taken by what we believe to be Vorath raiders. We're coordinating a response now." The room erupted into chaos. Parents shouted questions, demanded answers, and some broke down crying. But Lisa Blake remained silent, her face set in determination. "When do we leave?" she asked quietly. "Leave?" Peterson looked at her. "To get them back." Her voice was steel. "When do we leave to get our children back?" As the reality of the situation sank in, the mood in the room shifted. Parents stopped crying and started organizing. Engineers began working to restore systems. Scientists analyzed the Vorath device, and security personnel prepared for pursuit. Out in the cold vacuum of space, the 3 Vorath ships were already leaving Europa's orbit, unaware that they had just committed the gravest error in their species' history. They had taken human children prisoner, and the entire human race was about to show them why that was the worst decision they could have made. Commander Kyle Peterson stood over the strange Vorath device, watching as their best technician, Danny Miller, carefully examined it. The command center was now crowded with every available expert in the colony. "Can you tell us anything?" Peterson asked. Miller nodded slowly. "It's definitely a scrambler. Looks like it's designed to knock out our communications and power systems in a specific radius." "But why leave it behind?" Lisa Blake asked. Her eyes were red, but her voice remained steady. "Best guess they were in a hurry," Miller replied. "This tech is advanced, but there are signs of quick installation. They probably planned to retrieve it after the raid." High Counselor Zex paced nervously nearby, his 4 hands ringing together. The Lyrian had been making calls since the moment They discovered the Vorath's involvement, and each conversation seemed to leave him more agitated. "Commander," Zex said finally, "I've contacted the Galactic Council. What I'm about to tell you, it's going to sound unbelievable." Peterson crossed his arms. "Try me." The Vorath have never encountered humans before. They operate in the outer rim, far from your species' usual territories. They probably thought this was just another small mining colony. Easy pickings. "And now?" Dr. Wong asked. Zex's skin shifted to an even paler shade of blue. "Now, they're about to learn why the rest of the galaxy has unwritten rules about humans." Peterson frowned. "What rules?" "The most important one. Never, ever take human children." Before Peterson could ask for clarification, the colony's backup systems finally came online. Lights brightened throughout the command center, and screens flickered to life. "Sir," Lieutenant Santos called from her station. "We've got partial sensor readings. 3 ships, Vorath configuration, heading away from Europa at sublight speed." "Can we track them?" "Working on it. They're making for the asteroid belt, probably planning to hide their trail before jumping to hyperspace." Peterson turned to the assembled parents and personnel. "I need volunteers for a pursuit team. We'll take the Endeavor. She's our fastest ship." Every hand in the room went up. "I can only take 10, Peterson said. "Priority goes to those with combat or technical experience." As he selected his team, Zex approached him quietly. "Commander, I must speak with you privately." They stepped into Peterson's office. The Lyrian's expression was grave. "You need to understand what you're dealing with," Zex said. "When the Vorath realize they've taken human children, they'll either return them immediately or what? Or try to eliminate the evidence." Peterson felt his blood run cold. "You're saying they'll kill them?" "They might. The Vorath aren't known for their mercy. That's why I've arranged something else." Zex activated a small holographic projector, showing a star map. "I've contacted every species that trades with humans. They're all mobilizing." "For 3 children? You still don't understand." Zex leaned forward. "There's a reason humans are welcomed throughout the galaxy despite being relatively new to space travel. It's not your technology or your resources. It's your nature." "What about our nature?" "Your protective instincts, your willingness to risk everything for your young. Most species have survival instincts, but humans will burn down entire star systems for their children." A message alert interrupted their conversation. Santos burst into the office without knocking. "Sir, you need to see this." Back in the command center, the main screen showed an incoming transmission. The image was fuzzy at first, then resolved into a reptilian face with scaled skin and vertical pupils. "This is Captain Crix of the Vorath Empire," the alien said through a translator. "We have taken specimens from your colony for study. Resistance is futile. Any pursuit will result in the specimen's termination." The room fell silent. Parents clutched each other, some fighting back tears. But Peterson noticed something in the background of the transmission. Movement that Crix didn't seem to be aware of. "Enhance Sector 4, he ordered quietly. Santos zoomed in on the area behind Crix. There, barely visible, was what looked like a human child moving stealthily across the background. "Is that?" Lisa Blake whispered. "Marcus," Peterson confirmed. "He's loose on their ship." Crix continued his message, unaware of the small figure behind him. "We demand rare earth minerals and technology in exchange for the specimen's safe return. You have 1 solar cycle to comply." The transmission cut off. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Zex stepped forward, his communicator already in hand. "This is High Counselor Zex of the Lyrian Confederation calling all Vorath channels," he said, his voice carrying a tone of barely contained panic. "Priority message for Captain Crix." The Vorath captain's face appeared again, looking annoyed. "What do you want, Lyrian?" "You took human children prisoner. Are you insane?" Zex's professional composure shattered completely. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Crix snorted. "We've taken specimens, nothing more." "Those aren't specimens, you fool, they're human children." "Human Children. Do you know what that means? They appear to be juvenile mammals, weak and easily contained. Zex actually laughed, but it was a sound without humor. Captain Crix, in the interest of preventing a catastrophe, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. Return those children immediately. Right now. Before it's too late. The Vorath do not take orders from... This isn't an order. It's a warning. Every ship in this sector is already mobilizing. Not just human ships, everyone. Because we all know what happens when someone threatens human offspring. Crix's confidence seemed to waver slightly. What happens? They come. All of them. Every human within 1,000 light years will drop whatever they're doing and come for those children. They'll bring every ship, every weapon, every resource they have. They won't stop. They won't negotiate. They won't show mercy. You exaggerate. No species would Zex cut him off. Captain, my people have a saying. The universe has many dangers, but none so terrifying as a human parent whose child is in danger. Please, for your own sake, return the children now. The transmission ended. Zex turned to find every human in the room staring at him. Well, Peterson said slowly, that was dramatic. Not dramatic enough, apparently, Zex replied. He didn't listen. Then we do this the hard way. Peterson began issuing orders. Santos, prepare the Endeavor for immediate departure. Miller, I want every weapon system online. Dr. Wong, you're our science officer for this mission. What about me? Lisa Blake asked. Peterson looked at her determined face. You're coming too. If Marcus is loose on that ship, we'll need someone who knows how he thinks. Throughout the colony, word spread quickly. Workers abandoned their posts, pilots prepared their ships, and even civilian transports were being retrofitted with whatever weapons could be found. The news reached other human colonies, and from there, it spread like wildfire through human space. Within hours, a fleet began to assemble. Military vessels, cargo ships, private yachts. Anything with an engine and life support was pressed into service. The message was clear. Humans were coming for their children. Aboard the Vorath ship, Captain Crix reviewed the Lyrian's warning with his second-in-command, a scarred warrior named Voss. Your opinion? Crix asked. The Lyrian seemed genuinely frightened, Voss observed. Perhaps we should reconsider. An alarm interrupted them. Crix checked the display and his scales paled. What is it? Voss asked. Ships, Crix whispered. Dozens of them, all human. They're already coming. Back on Europa, High Counselor Zex stood at a viewport, watching as the first ships of the human fleet departed. He activated his personal communicator one more time. This is High Counselor Zex to all Lyrian vessels in the sector. The humans are mobilizing to recover their young. All ships are ordered to provide assistance. Repeat, assist the humans by any means necessary. He closed the channel and continued watching the ships leave. Behind him, Peterson approached. Thank you for the warning, the commander said. And for your help. Zex turned to face him. Commander, you should know, this isn't just about your children anymore. The Vorath have broken one of the galaxy's most sacred unwritten rules. What happens next will determine the future of interstellar relations. What do you mean? The galaxy is about to witness what happens when someone threatens human children. After today, no one will ever make that mistake again. The two watched in silence as more ships launched, their engines lighting up the darkness of space like angry stars. Somewhere out there, 3 children were waiting to be rescued, and behind them the full fury of humanity was awakening. Marcus Blake pressed himself against the cold metal wall of the Vorath ship's corridor. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to breathe quietly. The effects of the stun weapon had worn off an hour ago, and he had managed to slip away when his guard got distracted. Now he needed to find Katie and Tikva. The ship's interior was different from any human vessel he'd seen. The corridors were narrow and tall, built for beings much taller than humans. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, and the air smelled like metal and something sour. He peeked around the corner. 2 Vorath guards stood outside a door, their scaled, faces visible through their helmet visors. Marcus pulled back quickly. That had to be where they were keeping his friends. Back home, his mother had always said he took too many risks, but she had also taught him how to think like an engineer. Every problem has a solution, she would say. You just have to find the right tools. Marcus looked around for anything he could use. A panel on the wall caught his attention. It looked like some kind of control interface. He had watched his mother work with similar systems on Europa. Maybe. He touched the panel experimentally. Symbols lit up under his fingers. He had no idea what they meant, but he noticed that certain combinations made lights flicker in the corridor. After a few tries, he found a sequence that made an alarm sound briefly in another section of the ship. The guards looked at each other, then one of them moved to investigate. Marcus waited until the footsteps faded, then tried another combination. This time, the door they were guarding slid open halfway. The remaining guard spun around, confused. Marcus didn't wait. He ran forward and slid between the guard's legs, using his small size to his advantage. Before the Vorath could react, Marcus was inside the room. Marcus! Katie's voice came from the corner. She and Tikva were sitting on the floor, their hands bound with some kind of energy restraints. We need to go, Marcus said, working on their bindings. The restraints were unlike anything he'd seen, but they seemed to respond to touch. After a moment of fumbling, he managed to release Katie. The guard burst into the room, weapon raised. Katie didn't hesitate. She grabbed a loose piece of equipment from the floor and threw it at the guard's head. The Vorath ducked, giving them precious seconds. The maintenance tunnels, Tikva said as Marcus freed him. I heard them talking. There's a network throughout the ship. They ran past the stunned guard and into the corridor. Tikva led them to a small hatch that humans would never have noticed. It opened into a cramped tunnel filled with pipes and wiring. This way, Tikva whispered. I can hear the ship's systems. The communication array is 2 decks up. Why do we need that? Katie asked as they crawled through the tunnel. To send a message, Marcus replied. My mom showed me how to bounce signals off Jupiter's magnetosphere. If we can access their communications. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the human ship Endeavor, Commander Peterson watched the sensor displays with growing concern. They had been pursuing the Vorath ships for hours, but the enemy kept changing course, making tracking difficult. They're heading for the Kuiper Belt, Lieutenant Santos reported. If they reach it, we'll lose them in the debris field. Not acceptable, Peterson replied. He turned to Dr. Wong, who was working at the science station. Any luck with their technology? Dr. Wong shook his head. Their shielding is unlike anything I've seen, but there's something strange about their power signatures. They're fluctuating. Damage? No, it's more like interference. Internal interference. Lisa Blake looked up from her station. Marcus, she said quietly. He must be doing something. As if in response, the communication system crackled to life. A child's voice, distorted but recognizable, came through the speakers. Mom, Dad, can anyone hear me? Marcus. Lisa Blake jumped to her feet. We hear you. Are you safe? For now, Katie and Tikva are with me. We're in the maintenance tunnels. Katie figured out how to... The signal cut off briefly, then returned. To jam their systems. They don't know we're loose yet. Peterson took over the communication. Marcus, this is Commander Peterson. Can you tell us anything about their ship? It's big, Marcus replied. 3 main decks. They keep saying something. About a rendezvous point, and sir. They're really scared of humans, I heard them talking. They didn't know we were human children when they took us. The Lyrian ship that had joined their pursuit suddenly hailed them. High Counselor Zex's face appeared on screen, looking more agitated than ever. Commander, I've intercepted Vorath. Fleet communications, they're panicking. Reports are coming in from across the sector about human ships mobilizing. They've never seen anything like it. Good, Peterson said grimly. Maybe now they'll understand their mistake. On the Vorath flagship, Captain Crick stared at his tactical display in disbelief. What had started as a simple raid was turning into a nightmare. Human ships were appearing from every direction, and not just military vessels. Cargo haulers, mining ships, even pleasure craft, all racing toward his position. "Captain," Voss reported, his voice shaking, "we're receiving messages from human colonies we've never even heard of. They're all demanding the return of the children." "How many ships?" "At current count, over 200, and more are coming." Crix's scales paled. "That's impossible. No species mobilizes that quickly for 3 juveniles." "Sir, there's something else." Voss hesitated. "Internal systems are failing. Someone's sabotaging us from inside." Before Crix could respond, the lights flickered. On the security monitors, 3 small figures could be seen moving through the maintenance tunnels. The specimens escaped, Crix realized. "Find them." "Sir, with respect," Voss said carefully, "perhaps we should consider returning them, as the Lyrian suggested, before this escalates further." "The Vorath do not surrender to—" "Captain," the navigation officer interrupted. "New contacts. 3 human dreadnoughts just dropped out of hyperspace directly ahead." Crix stared at the massive warships that had appeared. They were easily 10 times the size of his vessels, bristling with weapons he couldn't even identify. "They're hailing us," the communication officer reported. On screen, a human face appeared, belonging to Admiral Helen Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held a fury that made Crix's blood run cold. "Vorath vessels," she said, her voice like ice. "You have exactly 1 chance. Return our children unharmed, and you may leave with your lives. Refuse, and I will demonstrate why the galaxy fears human parents." Crix looked at his tactical display again. More ships were arriving every minute. He turned to Voss, seeing his own defeat reflected in his second-in-command's eyes. "Begin preparations to transfer the specimens," he ordered quietly. In the maintenance tunnels, Marcus, Katie, and Tikva felt the ship change course. They could hear running footsteps and shouted orders in the corridors above them. "Something's happening," Katie whispered. Tikva's ear appendages twitched. "They're surrendering. They're going to return us." "How do you know?" Marcus asked. "Because," Tikva replied with something like awe in his voice. "They're terrified. They keep saying the humans are coming like it's a death sentence." Back on the Endeavor, Commander Peterson watched as the Vorath ships slowly came to a stop. The tactical display showed hundreds of human vessels surrounding them, with more arriving every minute. "Sir," Santos reported, "we're being hailed by the Vorath flagship. They're requesting terms of surrender." Peterson allowed himself a small smile. "Put them through." Captain Crix appeared on screen, his earlier arrogance completely gone. We wish to return your juveniles, unharmed. We ask only for safe passage in return." "Your request is noted," Peterson replied. "Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with immediate force." As the human boarding teams prepared to launch, Lisa Blake stood beside Peterson, tears of relief in her eyes. "We're getting them back," she whispered. "We are," Peterson confirmed. He looked out at the assembled fleet, military ships, civilian vessels, and everything in between. "And after today, no one will ever make this mistake again." The boarding craft launched, carrying parents and soldiers alike toward the Vorath ships. In the tunnels, 3 children waited to be rescued, unaware that their capture had just changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Captain Crix stood on the bridge of his ship, watching in horror as more human vessels appeared on his scanners. His second-in-command, Voss, was frantically checking the numbers again and again, as if hoping they would change. "This is impossible," Crix muttered. "We took 3 juveniles from a small colony. Why are there hundreds of ships?" A junior officer approached nervously. "Captain, we've decoded some of their communications. They're coming from everywhere. Earth, Mars, the Belt, colonies, even deep space mining operations. They're all coming here." "For 3 children?" "Yes, sir." "And Captain?" The officer's scales had turned pale green with fear. "Some of these ships aren't even armed. They're bringing whatever they have, mining lasers, cargo haulers with improvised weapons, even racing ships. They don't care if they can fight, they're just coming." Crix felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had raided dozens of colonies across the galaxy, taking specimens from many species. Never had he seen a response like this. "Show me the human dreadnoughts again," he ordered. The tactical display zoomed in on the 3 massive warships that had appeared directly in their path. They were unlike anything in the Vorath database, huge, heavily armored, with weapon systems that defied classification. "Sir," Voss said quietly, "I've been studying human history since the Lyrian warned us. There's something you should know." "What is it?" "Humans have a saying, 'Hell hath no fury like a parent whose child is threatened.' Their entire evolutionary history is built around protecting their young. Their literature, their myths, their laws, everything revolves around the safety of their children." Before Crix could respond, an alarm sounded. Internal sensors showed movement in the maintenance tunnels. The escaped juveniles were heading toward the engine room. "They're going to sabotage our engines," Voss realized. "If we can't move, then we're at the mercy of their fleet," Crix finished. He slammed his fist on the console. "How did juveniles manage to evade our security?" "Sir, that's what I'm trying to tell you. They're not just juveniles, they're human juveniles. They learn, adapt, and problem-solve faster than most adult species. We made a critical error in judgment." In the maintenance tunnels, Marcus led his friends toward what he hoped was the engine room. The technical knowledge his mother had taught him was proving invaluable. "There!" He pointed to a cluster of conduits. "Those look like power distribution nodes. If we can disrupt them—" "The ship loses propulsion," Katie finished. She grinned. "Marcus, you're a genius." "We need to be careful," Tikva warned. "If we damage the wrong systems, we could hurt ourselves too." Marcus nodded and began examining the nodes more closely. Katie kept watch while Tikva used his natural ability to sense electromagnetic fields to guide Marcus's work. "Try that one," Tikva suggested, pointing to a particular conduit. Marcus carefully disconnected several components. The ship shuddered slightly, and they heard distant alarms. "It's working," Katie whispered excitedly. On the bridge, Crix watched helplessly as his engine power dropped to critical levels. His engineering team reported multiple system failures, all apparently caused by precise, deliberate sabotage. "Captain," the communication officer called out, "the human admiral is hailing." "Us again." Admiral Rodriguez's face appeared on screen. This time she wasn't alone. Beside her stood several other human officers, including Commander Peterson from Europa Colony. "Captain Crix," the admiral said, "your engines appear to be failing." "How unfortunate." Crix straightened, trying to maintain some dignity. "What do you want?" "What we've wanted from the beginning. Our children. Returned. Now." "And if I refuse?" The admiral's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes made Crix's scales crawl. "Then I'll demonstrate why even the Krell Empire, with all their might, signed a treaty promising never to harm human children." "The Krell?" Crix couldn't hide his shock. The Krell were legendary warriors, feared throughout the galaxy. "They signed a treaty about your juveniles?" "After the incident on Sigma Draconis," Commander Peterson spoke up, "they took one human child, just one. The response was educational." Crix turned to Voss, who was accessing historical records. His second-in-command's face had gone completely pale. "Sir," Voss whispered, "the Sigma Draconis incident. The humans destroyed an entire Krell battle fleet. They didn't stop until the child was returned." "One child?" Crix repeated, disbelieving. "One child," Admiral Rodriguez confirmed. "And now you have 3. Consider your position carefully, Captain." At that moment, the ship's internal communications activated. A young voice, Marcus's voice, came through the speakers. "Hi, this is Marcus Blake. We've shut down your engines. We can shut down life support next if you don't return us home. Just thought you should know." Crix stared at the speaker in disbelief. "The juvenile is threatening us." "Sir," Voss said urgently, "I've found more records. Human children are taught survival skills from an early age. They're educated in science, technology, problem-solving. What we thought were helpless specimens are actually—" Highly capable young humans who are currently in control of our engine systems. Crix finished grimly. The tactical display beeped again. More ships were arriving. Crix saw symbols he recognized. Lyrian vessels, Antaran traders, even a few Danebian science ships. They were all taking positions around the human fleet. "Captain," the sensor officer reported, "we're receiving a message from the Galactic Council. They're demanding we release the humans immediately, or face sanctions from all member species." Crix slumped in his command chair. He had thought this was a simple raid. Take a few specimens, demand ransom, leave before anyone could respond. He hadn't known he was kidnapping the children of the most protective species in the galaxy. "Open a channel to the human admiral," he ordered quietly. When Rodriguez appeared on screen, Crix bowed his head. "Admiral, we surrender unconditionally. We will return your children immediately. We ask only that you spare our lives." "Your lives were never in danger," Rodriguez replied. "Unless you harmed our children." "Are they unharmed?" "Yes, completely unharmed, and apparently in control of our engine room." For the first time, the Admiral smiled slightly. "That sounds about right. Prepare to be boarded, and Captain, let this be a lesson about underestimating humans, especially our children." The boarding craft launched from the human ships. Parents, soldiers, and medical teams prepared to retrieve the children. In the engine room, Marcus, Katie, and Tikva heard the announcement of surrender over the ship's communication system. "We did it," Katie said, hugging her friends. "We're going home." "You did it," Tikva corrected. "You humans are remarkable." Marcus grinned. "Wait until you see what our parents can do." As the boarding teams approached, every Vorath on the ship received a final lesson in human nature. They watched as hundreds of ships, military, civilian, and everything in between, maintained perfect formation around their vessels. They saw how every human moved with single-minded purpose toward one goal, recovering their children, and they finally understood why the galaxy had an unwritten rule about human children. It wasn't about the children's value as individuals, though that was important. It was about what humans would do, what they would sacrifice, what they would destroy, what lines they would cross, to protect their young. Captain Crix stood ready to meet the boarding team, his surrender complete. As he waited, he made a mental note to add a new entry to the Vorath database. Human juveniles. Approach with extreme caution. Adult response level. Extinction threat. The airlock opened and the humans poured in. The rescue was about to begin, and the galaxy would never forget what happened when someone threatened human children. The airlock doors of the Vorath ship hissed open, and Lieutenant Alex Gardner led the first boarding team inside. Behind him came a mixed group of soldiers and parents, including Lisa Blake and Dr. Wong. They moved with purpose, but without the violence the Vorath had expected. Captain Crix stood at attention, his hands visible and weapons on the ground. His crew had followed his example, laying down their arms and standing in neat rows. They had learned their lesson. "Where are our children?" Gardner asked, his voice steady but firm. "Engine room," Crix replied immediately. "They've been quite resourceful. We haven't harmed them." Lisa Blake stepped forward. "Take us to them now." Crix nodded and led the way personally. As they walked through the corridors, he noticed how the humans observed everything, their eyes missing no detail. These weren't panicked parents. They were calculating, controlled, and far more dangerous because of it. In the engine room, Marcus, Katie, and Tikva heard footsteps approaching. They tensed, ready to defend themselves if necessary, but then they heard familiar voices. "Marcus? Katie?" Lisa Blake called out. "Mom!" Marcus scrambled out from behind a console and ran into his mother's arms. Katie did the same with her father, while Tikva was swept up by a group of Lyrian rescuers who had joined the boarding party. Lieutenant Gardner examined the engine controls, impressed by what he saw. "They managed to disable your entire propulsion system without causing any permanent damage. Smart kids." Crix watched the reunions with something like amazement. He had expected anger, violence, retribution. Instead, he saw relief, joy, and love. It made what came next even more surprising. Commander Peterson entered the engine room, followed by Admiral Rodriguez. They surveyed the scene before approaching Crix. "Captain," Peterson said, "you and your crew will be taken into custody. You'll stand trial for kidnapping and attempted extortion." "I understand," Crix replied. "But may I ask, why didn't you destroy us? You had the power." Admiral Rodriguez looked at him with something almost like pity. "Because our children were safe. If they hadn't been—" She let the sentence hang in the air. "We would have made an example of you that would echo through history," Peterson finished. "Consider yourself fortunate that these children were clever enough to protect themselves." As the Vorath crew was escorted to holding cells on the human ships, the children were taken to medical bays for examination. Despite their ordeal, all three were found to be in perfect health. Hours later, in the conference room of the Endeavor, High Counselor Zex addressed a gathering of human officials, alien diplomats, and media representatives from across the galaxy. Today's events have shown something that many in the galaxy already knew, but some had forgotten, Zex began. Humans, despite being relatively new to the interstellar community, possess a unique trait that makes them both valuable allies and terrifying enemies. He gestured to a holographic display showing the assembled fleet. No other species would have mobilized this kind of response for 3 children. No other species would have seen merchants, miners, and scientists abandon their work to join up by military operation. This is what makes humans special. But more importantly, he continued, this is what makes humans necessary. In a galaxy full of predators, we need species who will stand up for the innocent, who will protect the vulnerable, who will risk everything for what's right. The display changed to show images of Marcus, Katie, and Tikva. These children proved something else today. They showed us that human younglings are not helpless victims. They are clever, brave, and resourceful. They are the future of not just humanity, but of our entire galactic community. In the audience, Marcus sat between his parents, feeling slightly embarrassed by all the attention. Katie was beside him, and Tikva sat with his parent unit nearby. They had been through something terrible, but they had survived it together. Days later, at the Galactic Council headquarters, Captain Crix stood trial. The proceedings were broadcast across known space. He pleaded guilty to all charges and made a statement that would be remembered for generations. "I was arrogant," he admitted. "I saw humans as just another species to exploit. I was wrong. They are not like us. They are not like anyone. When you threaten their children, you awaken something, primal, something unstoppable. Let my mistake be a warning to others." The council sentenced Crix to imprisonment but spared his crew, recognizing that they had followed orders and had not directly harmed the children. More importantly, they passed a new law, officially codifying what had been an unwritten rule. Any attack on human children would be considered an attack on the entire human species and would be met with full retaliatory force. Back on Europa, life slowly returned to normal. The colony held a celebration for the returned children, but also used the opportunity to strengthen their defenses and improve their emergency response systems. Marcus, Katie, and Tikva became symbols of something larger than themselves. Their story spread throughout human space and beyond, becoming a legend that would be told for generations. Years later, when Marcus was grown and working as an engineer like his mother, he would sometimes tell the story to new arrivals at the colony. He would explain how 3 scared children had managed to disable an alien warship, and how hundreds of humans had dropped everything to come to their rescue. But the most important part, he would always say, is what it taught the galaxy about us. We're not the strongest species or the smartest or the most advanced, but we are the most protective of our children, and that makes us unique. Katie went on to join the Earth Defense Force, specializing in child protection and rescue operations. Tikva became an ambassador, working to strengthen the bonds between humans and other species. The Vorath never again attempted to raid human settlements. Other species took note, and incidents involving human children dropped to 0 across known space. The message was clear and universal. Human children were off limits. In the grand amphitheater of the Galactic Council, a new statue was erected. It showed 3 children, 2 human and 1 Lyrian, standing together looking up at the stars. The plaque beneath it read, "In memory of the day the galaxy learned why you never take human children." High Counselor Zex would often stand before this statue, remembering his panic when he realized what the Vorath had done. He would smile, knowing that sometimes the most important lessons are learned not through war or diplomacy, but through the actions of children who refuse to be victims. And, across the galaxy, whenever someone suggested targeting human settlements, others would remind them of the Europa incident. They would speak of hundreds of ships appearing from nowhere, of entire civilizations mobilizing overnight, of the fury of human parents. "You took human children prisoner? Are you insane?" became a common phrase, a warning passed down through generations. It served as a reminder that in a universe full of dangers, perhaps the most dangerous thing of all was standing between humans and their young. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Human children were not just protected, they were sacred, and anyone who forgot that did so at their own peril.